Okay, welcome back. You had a little break there. So if you joined me for my earlier presentation, I was talking about the history of Islam. I know it was kind of fast and furious. I know I talk fast, and I know I covered a lot of material. I know I overlooked a lot of material that I could have included. But hopefully it was helpful to you. Hopefully it's going to help you as we discuss these other topics related to Islam and how they differ from Christianity. Hopefully you have a pretty good context after watching that of how these issues fit in. So now I'm going to address a controversial topic, is Islam peaceful? Of course, a lot of people will tell you it is. A lot of people will tell you it isn't. A lot of those people haven't actually read the documents, and a lot of those people don't necessarily have Muslim friends. I've been blessed to have many Muslim friends thanks to my travels and thanks to just interactions with people here in my community. I've had a lot of Muslim friends. Obviously, if they weren't peaceful, I don't think we'd be very good friends. So obviously, I don't think it's fair to call them all terrorists or anything like that. But there are some things from their own scripture that I think we need to look at. So again, I always start off with some scriptures, and I always like to start off with this when we're talking about Islam especially. But I say to you, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you. And pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. So I'm sorry if you think Muslims are the enemy. I'm sorry that you feel that way. But even if you do feel that they are the enemy, understand what Christ has called us to do. He's called us to love our enemies, to pray for them, to bless them. And then in Colossians, the Apostle Paul reminds us that he's talking to Christians here, you once were alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now he is reconciled. So we as Christians, if you're a Christian, you used to be God's enemy before you were saved. So what did God do for his enemies? He loved us. He died on the cross for us. He reached out to us in love. So that's the example that we need to follow. So once again, I shouldn't have to say this, but nothing I say should be intended to stir up any kind of hatred or animosity between Jews and Christians, but I do want to teach the truth. So is it peaceful? Well, here's a couple quotes. One of them from the former Prime Minister of Malaysia. He said, clearly Islam, the religion, is not the cause of terrorism. Islam, as I said, is the religion of peace. However, through the centuries, deviations from the true teaching of Islam take place. And so people who call themselves Muslims kill despite the injunction of their own religion against killing, especially the innocent people. Then the great boxer, Mohammad Ali, if you haven't seen the movie, I recommend it. He said the word Islam means peace. Now, I disagree with that. I think the word Islam means submission, but that's what he said. The word Muslim means one who surrenders to God. That's great. But the press makes us seem like haters. Okay, so I believe that these men, when they say that Islam is a religion of peace, I believe they are being sincere. They are talking from their hearts. They don't support ISIS or Al-Qaeda or any of these other terrible things. In their mind, Islam is peaceful. The way they practice it is peaceful. And I think we've got to give them credit, or give them, at least acknowledge them, that what they say is what they mean. But then at the other end of the spectrum, we got guys like Osama bin Laden. He said, I am one of the servants of Allah. We do our duty of fighting for the sake of the religion of Allah. So here's another Muslim who says it's not only okay to fight, it's our duty. We have to fight in the name of the religion. So what's going on? And you can probably think of several instances where Muslims have fought or committed acts of terrorism in the name of the religion. So what's going on here? The latest count I found, there's been 37,154 deadly terror attacks from September 11, 2001 to last month, 6/6 of 2020. There is a website, thereligionofpeace.com. You can look up to see what the latest numbers are. Obviously, we're not going to go through them all, but I just want to remind you of a few of them. We all remember the shoe bomber, probably. This was shortly after the 9/11 attacks. This is a guy who tried to blow up a plane with a bomb in his shoe, right, in the name of Islam. You might remember the foiled attack on the National Guard recruiting station. This guy's going to go shoot up some people who were trying to join the U.S. military. It was foiled by the FBI. You may remember Major Nadal Hassan. This was a U.S. soldier, an officer in the U.S. Army, who also was a Muslim. He went on to Fort Hood, Texas, and started shooting other U.S. soldiers, saying Allah Akbar, and he was very religious, and he was saying he's done it in the name of Islam. And of course, our president at the time, Barack Obama, didn't want to call this an act of terrorism. He wanted to call it workplace violence. So you can decide for yourself whether you agree with that. You probably remember the Boston Marathon bombing. These two young men used a pressure cooker to make bombs. Went off near the finish line, killed 3 people. again, in the name of Islam. So is it peaceful or not? Well, there was a Gallup poll done in 2007. It's a little bit dated, but I think it's pretty much up to date as far as how Muslims feel. Well, they surveyed Muslims worldwide and got their opinion on peaceful, they got their opinion on jihad and Islamic war and terrorism and so on and so forth. And for the most part, there's some really good news. But there's also some other news that we're going to talk about. But first, the good news. Out of about 2.35 million Muslims in America, 68% had an unfavorable view of Al-Qaeda. Okay, that's good. 78% were against suicide bombings, against civilian targets. Again, overwhelming majority. In Britain, out of 1.6 million Muslims, 85% opposed terrorism against Westerners. And out of 1.3 billion Muslims worldwide, 93% are moderate, that they are peaceful, non-violent. And let's just say those numbers are pretty accurate. I can probably agree with that. 93% of Muslims are non-violent. But that should raise some questions in your mind. Should raise the question of, what about the other 7%? Why is there 7% that are not peaceful? If I found out that 7% of people in my church were okay with terrorism, I would consider that a big problem. I would want to know what's going on. So let's go on to the other news. Only 5% of American Muslims hold a favorable view of Al-Qaeda, but that's 117,500 people in America that are favorable towards Al-Qaeda in 2007. 15% of British Muslims justify suicide bombings. That's 240,000 people. And of course, 7% of Muslims worldwide, that's 91 million people, justify terrorism. That doesn't mean they are terrorists necessarily, but they can justify it in their own mind. So we got some division here. We got two different things going on. But both of these groups of people can use the Quran to justify their position, to explain their positions. So let's go over some of the peaceful verses in the Quran. My Muslim friends, when we get to these conversations, there's certain verses they always bring up to prove that their religion is a religion of peace. And here are some of them. Surah 2. You're going to see the word surah a lot. Surah just means chapter. If you open up the Quran, you notice it doesn't start with in the beginning. It doesn't end with in the end. There's no Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There's just Surah 1, Surah 2, Surah 3, Surah 4. So it just means chapter. So in chapter 2 it says, surely those who believe, and those who are Jews and Christians and the Sabaeans, whoever believes in Allah in the last day and does good, they shall have the reward from the Lord, and there is no fear in them, nor shall they grieve. Pretty favorable, right? I like it. Surah 60 says, act kindly to the Jews and Christians. And my favorite verse in the Quran is this: there is no compulsion in religion. It means you can't force somebody to change your religion. Pretty peaceful. Surah 5 says, whoever kills a soul, unless for a soul, or for corruption in the land, is as if he had slain mankind entirely. And whoever saves one, it is as if he has saved mankind entirely. And I remember one of my friends in Iraq, he shared this verse to me. He's like, hey, if you murder one person, that's like murdering the whole world. That's the way our religion sees it. That's how peaceful we are. Like, okay, I like it. But there are also some violent verses in the Quran as well. Let's go through some of those. In Surah 2, also back in the second chapter, it says, kill them wherever you overtake them and expel them wherever they have expelled you. And fitna, as in cleanliness, is worse than killing. Surah 2 also says, fighting has been enjoined upon you while it is hateful to you. But perhaps you hate a thing that's good for you, and perhaps you love a thing that's bad for you. In other words, some of you may not like the idea of fighting, but it's good for you. Right? Surah 4 says that those who fight in the cause of Allah, who sell the life of this world for the hereafter, and who fights in the cause of Allah and is killed or achieves victory, we will bestow on him a great reward. And when you see the word we, by the way, in the Quran, that just means God. He's not talking in a Trinitarian sense. He's just talking about his completeness. It just comes across as we. In English, excuse me. And Surah 5 again says, O you who believe, do not take the Jews and Christians for friends, for they are friends of each other. And whoever amongst you takes them for a friend, surely he is one of them. And in Surah 8 it says, I will cast terror into the hearts of those who disbelieve. So strike them upon their necks and strike them upon every fingertips. It means cut their heads off, cut their fingers off. And Surah 8 also says, and fight them until there is no temptation, until the religion, all of it, is for all. And it said, Surah 8 goes on and says, "It is not for the prophet to have captives of war until he inflicts a massacre upon Allah's enemies in the land." Surah 9, one you may have heard before, "Slay the idolaters wherever you find them, and take them captives and besiege them and lie in wait for them and take them every ambush. If they repent and keep the poor and pay the poor rate, then leave their way free to them, for surely Allah is merciful, forgiving." All right. Surah 9 also says, "Fight those who do not believe in Allah or the last day. Do not consider unlawful what Allah and His messengers have made unlawful, and do not adopt the religion of truth from those who were given the scriptures. Fight until they give the jizya," that's that tax, "willingly until they are humble." So if you're a non-Muslim living in a Muslim land, you have to pay this tax for protection, for the privilege of living in a Muslim land. All right, Surah 9 goes on and on. It says, "O prophet, fight against the disbelievers and the hypocrites, and be harsh upon them, and their refuge is hell, and wretched is their destination. And O you who have believed, fight those adjacent to you who are the disbelievers, and let them find in you a harshness, and know that Allah is with the righteous." Surah 25 says, "So do not follow the unbelievers and strive against them with a mighty striving." And 47 says, when you encounter the unbelievers, strike off their heads until you have made a wide slaughter among them, tie up the remaining captives." Surah 66 says, "O prophet, strive hard against the unbelievers and the hypocrites, and be hard against them, for their abode is in hell, and evil is their result." So have I covered them all? Probably not. But we notice there's a divide, right? There's a contradiction. Why the contradiction? Why is it that certain verses in the Quran are peaceful and certain are very violent? And there are Muslims that can pick and choose which ones they believe. Well, we have to understand a word called abrogate. Abrogate means to abolish by authoritative action, to annul. It means to treat as non-existence, like abrogating your responsibilities. This shows up in the Quran in chapter 2. It says, "Whatever communications we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, we bring one better than it or like it." So this is God saying, if I give you a revelation at one point, and then later on I give you a revelation that's going to contradict it, just the first one's been abrogated. It doesn't count anymore. Stick with the newer one. So, which verses are abrogated? There's where the controversy is. You could be a peaceful Muslim and say, well, all the violent verses have been abrogated. Or you could be a terrorist and say all the peaceful verses have been abrogated. Which one's right? Well, I'm not an Islamic scholar. I've read the Quran. I've referenced it many times. I'm not a scholar of the Quran. But I think we can get a pretty good hint over which ones have been abrogated by understanding, again, the history of Islam. One of the problems with the Quran is it's not in chronological order. It doesn't tell you what happened first. It's just one sermon after another. And for the most part, it's arranged by the length of the sermon, so you don't know which ones came first. So you couldn't just read it through and see which ones are abrogated. But if we look back at our history lesson, at the life of Mohammad, we remember this thing called the Hijra, where he moved from Mecca to Medina. Remember, in Mecca, he had a small following. He needed all the friends he could get. That's where I believe those peaceful verses, those positive verses towards the Jews and Christians were revealed. Later on, when he was in Medina, he was a mighty military leader. He turned on the Jews. He turned on the Christians. He became a conqueror. That's when I believe those violent verses come in. So if we take that timeline, that means the ones that came later, the violent ones, abrogated the ones that come earlier. So if I was to try to take a proper understanding of the Quran, I would have to go with the violent verses. Okay? And as we see, right after Muhammad died, remember, this is how much was conquered, After he died, his 4 successors expanded the empire, and they expanded the empire. So by the time he died, his followers didn't seem to think it was a peaceful religion. They seemed to think it was their job to go out and conquer as much territory as they could. So they obviously understood that any peaceful verses in the Quran have been abrogated. So, here's some questions for you to consider. You may not agree with my interpretation of the Quran, but consider, do the post-Hijra verses abrogate the pre-Hijra verses? Do the violent verses abrogate the peaceful verses? Does the history of Islam reflect that it's a peaceful religion? Think about how much was conquered during Muhammad's lifetime, how much was conquered by the next 4 rulers, how much is being conquered today in the name of Islam. Has Islam ever brought peace to a region? What I mean by that, was there ever a region that was not peaceful until Islam showed up and then became peaceful? I would argue no. And does the Quran ever call us to love our enemies? Well, let's go over some verses that are not in the Quran. Might shed some more light on it. One of them is the one we kept going over, is Matthew 5:44. Nowhere does Mohammad tell his followers to love his enemies. That's something that's pretty unique to Jesus. Never does he say, pray for those who persecute you. Ezekiel 33:11, I love this verse. This is where God says, say to them, as I live, says the Lord, I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but that the wicked turn from his way and live. Turn from your evil ways. Why should you die, O house of Israel? So here's God, the God of the Bible, reaching out to his people who are acting like his enemies, and he's saying, I don't want you guys to die. I take no pleasure in your death. I want you to turn back towards me. We don't see that kind of thing in the Quran. Romans 5:8 says, God demonstrates his own love towards us, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. There's a lot in the Quran about what people are expected to do for God, but there's nothing in the Quran about what God has reached down and sacrificed himself for humanity. So, is Islam a religion of peace? Well, again, that's a complicated question. I think most people who try to answer that question try to oversimplify it. They try to give it an answer that really doesn't do justice. Again, I have a lot of Muslim friends. I've been blessed over the years to know different Muslims from different parts of the world. And obviously, we wouldn't have a very good friendship if I didn't think they were peaceful, or if they weren't peaceful. But obviously, we have a lot who are not peaceful as well. So my understanding of the Quran, if you take it at face value, is it does call for violence. Now, I don't necessarily think it's fruitful to get into an argument with Muslims about this. You know, if you meet a Muslim and he says his religion's peaceful, don't argue with him. Don't try to convince him otherwise. What good's he going to do? What are you going to do, prove him wrong that his religion's a violent religion and he's going to go out and do violence in the name of his religion? If he understands it's a peaceful religion, meet him where he's at and try to talk about your understanding of God. We're going to get into understanding of Scripture and Jesus and salvation. Much better topics to talk about than this. But I think this is something important for us to understand. And I hope when you hear somebody ask this question, you don't try to oversimplify it as is done so often. So at this point, I'm going to take another quick break, and we're going to move into the next section, which talks about Islamic Scripture. Thank you.